Welcome, everybody. This is episode 4, which means month 4 of the Q and CDE show of AI is in everything, everywhere, all at once. And if this is your first episode with us, welcome. When Kat and I were talking, and Jeff, and then Christina joined the team. We're talking about this show. We're talking about bringing the latest information to educators every single month, and things change constantly. So we want to make sure that you are a part of that process. So please be aware that we do have a form that you can fill out anytime during the month. And if you're live right now watching this show, you can ask any questions in the comments. But please ask your questions and we will delve into them and do our research and bring you the answers. And you can do that at qlearns.org/AIEEAAO, almost like EIEIO, but for AI. Welcome to the show. Let's go ahead and just do a quick round robin of who we are, and then we'll get started. So my name is Joe Marquez, Director of Academic Innovation for Q. And this way, there we go. Right over here to my side is Catherine Goyette. Catherine, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Goyette. People call me Kat. I am the computer science coordinator for the Department of Education here in California. And I'm going to ping it over to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Christina Mattis.
Hey everyone, I'm Christina Mattis, and I support the digital equity broadband coordination for our great state of California at the Department of Education. And as always, it is a pleasure to be here.
And Christina, we love you being here. You know, you can't have any internet in the classroom without broadband. So, I mean, you're basically the glue that holds the internet together for the education system. So we appreciate that.
I don't know if it's the glue as much as, using that building a house analogy, that you need to have a good, strong, robust, reliable foundation so that nothing crumbles on top of it. And so, I think this is why Kat and I work so well hand in hand, because you need both, and both inform each other. So,
the age-old talk track of I don't use computers in the classroom because the internet's too slow, right?
The internet is too slow, or I have to figure out a loophole or a workaround, and it should just work. It shouldn't be complicated. It should just be easy, one-click shopping. That's it.
And it's great. And you know how big my heart got when I saw that the CDE was able to nab 2 of the brightest minds in education, and you, Kat, and yourself, Christina. So I'm ecstatic of where the state is going. So to get started, thank you for being here. So I wanted to pose this question to the group, because we're talking about the latest and greatest. So, it's the new year. There's a lot of new bills that were enacted, and there's a lot of new bills that are being proposed. And one of them is SB 896, also known as the California AI Accountability Act, introduced by Senator Bill Dodd. So it can also be called the Dodd AI Accountability Act. And in this, I want to read kind of this statement so that we can look at it through the lens of education. Right. So the bill's language acknowledges the potential beneficial uses of generative AI and encourages collaboration between state universities and the private sector to train students to meet the AI workforce development needs. Right. So this bill is acknowledging, hey, AI is here to stay. It is going to be part of the workforce that our students are going to be entering when they leave their educational profession. So what are we doing in education and the business fields to get students prepared, but also ensuring there's ethical and privacy and security concerns in there. So I would love to pose it to you, knowing that bill is in the works, and I know there's lots of frameworks that have been passed. Catherine, I know another state has passed some frameworks. Where are you seeing this? Are you seeing a slow roll of acceptance? Are you seeing that in eagerness to accept it? Looking at the state level, what are you seeing with all the talk tracks coming out?
I'm seeing in California specifically, if you look at the executive order that Governor Newsom had had put out a few months ago, and then the California Generative AI report really mirrors what this bill seems to get to as well, in that we are not putting our heads in the sand and pretending this isn't happening, right? Like, we know that there are potential positive use cases, but that also we need to understand how to keep ourselves and our constituents, right? For the legislators, our students, for educators, our employees, if we're employers, all of us, we need to learn how to keep each other safe and keep ourselves safe. So I think that it absolutely, I've actually looked through that guidance and a lot of what California is coming out with from the governor's office and such, and it really does align to what the Department of Education has put out also, in that we really want to be teaching students and educators to be responsible with this. So from California, from the state perspective, I really appreciate that is occurring. I know California's Department of Ed was one of the first 2 states to come out with AI guidance, and West Virginia just came out with guidance as well, which is exciting. And sometimes it takes some time to trickle down, so to speak, to the classroom, because there's levels we have to go through. But from what I have seen, particularly with members of CUE, in interacting with educators at Fall CUE and such, is that educators know that there's a lot of benefits, and they want to know how to do this with kids, but how to be safe. And that's the challenge right now. And I know Christina has a lot of insight on that, and how to make sure that we adhere to our FERPA laws while still making sure kids are educated in regards to the digital world.
And even to that, thinking about, it is perfectly fine for someone to not be first in line. There are districts and schools that are ready to dive in full force. We've seen that in LA County. We're seeing that at SF Unified. Articles are capturing their great stories of how they are fully embracing AI, thoughtfully, carefully, safely. And then we also know that there are schools that are dipping their toes into the AI world, and they want to learn from others and how others are experiencing the process. And that's totally great as well. And also to Kat's point, right? I mean, and to your point, Joe, we know that it's here to stay. And so how can schools and districts really understand and say, yeah, we have to let this in, because if we don't, we know that kids are going to be exposed to AI outside of schools. And so how do we use this opportunity to educate, to raise awareness, to build in those foundations of cyber safety, and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, what is responsible and what is not responsible. And so we work within our schools and our districts so that we can then apply and transfer that knowledge to our communities.
Yeah. And, I love that talk track because, Catherine was alluding to earlier that a lot of these frameworks are very general, and it's general to create a framework is something you could build around. Right. And we want school districts to be able to see a framework and build around it to meet the needs of their school communities. Right. And we see some schools diving full steam ahead, which is great. And I make that analogy to like a YouTube teardown video. They're just cracking open the iPhone just to see what's in it and poking and prodding. And they may not be able to put it back together, but they're sharing what's inside. And then others watch the video so that they can be careful if they do ever have to open it. And both sides of the coin are perfectly okay. But both people in those videos know that at one point they're going to have to open that iPhone, and they may not be ready for it, and they may be scared, but at least there's guidance to help you get there. And I think that is key, in that at the moment, everything is so fresh and so new and constantly changing that it is okay to just dip your toe. But it is also okay to jump in there and try and break things. But the one thing we have to always constantly remind ourselves is that student data privacy, right? And I think, giving teachers the opportunity to try these new tools and see if they can create lessons with them and analyze data, I think that's fine. But they have to be trained on removing any identifiable student information. They have to be trained on doing it in a way that says a student or the student, but no identifiable information. And if teachers aren't being trained that or told that, they may miss that step. So I do think the talk track is training the teachers to properly understand how to use these tools. But also, Christina, one thing you said that really resonates with me is the kids are already using these tools at home. And so we can't wait to talk to them about proper ethical uses of these tools, even though they may not be being used in the classroom right now. They're being used at home. And if we stick our heads in the sand and say, well, they're not being used in my class, so I can't talk about them, I think we're going to miss the boat. Just like we kind of missed the boat on social media, talking about social media safety in the classroom. I think we need to jump on this now to create those ethical uses or AI abuses that may be coming into play right now or down the road.
And this really does intertwine and interweave with our overall attempt to create safe digital citizenship environments and spaces. And so in addition to educating and raising awareness for our students, for our educators, staff, administrators, we can also and should remember to engage our families and our parents and our guardians and bring them into the conversations as well, and allow them an opportunity to learn alongside their students so that they can carry on that conversation back at home.
Yeah, and this also, I love how you're connecting AI to digital citizenship, because it comes into play perfectly here. But I also want to throw in digital media literacy. Right. With the new bill that just came to pass and go into law this January 1st, AB 873, which is asking teachers to incorporate digital media literacy into the core classes. It's going to be incredibly important to showcase how fast misinformation can be now created and disseminated across social media platforms and digital media platforms at a moment's notice. One of my favorite quotes, and I forget who said it, so I can't quote who said it, is now in the world of the digital age, a lie can go around the world 8 times before the truth can even get up and put its pants on, right? That means that, people can see the lie and take it as fact, and they won't go back and look to see if it was real or not, because it takes a long time to retract things now. Or, as we all know, when retractions come, they are always buried in the pages. They're not at the front page anymore. So how do we get kids to understand that AI can now create disinformation just as well as create great information? And how can we create ethics around proper use of these tools and understanding what the abuses of these tools can be? So I'd love to hear any thoughts on that.
I'll say one thing and then I'll let Kat, because Kat has a wealth of knowledge on this one. But it comes back to, like you said, media literacy and fact checking and critical thinking. And don't take that first reference as the end all be all. Go look at other reputable sources that have been peer reviewed and fact checked. Go for your, bottom line of, like, if you find 3 sources that say the exact same thing. And so, it just comes down to being a critical thinker and not just taking things at face value anymore, because you don't know what's real out there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Christina. And I would agree. And I'd also say, so those that are looking for, that have read that news and said media literacy, now I have to teach something else. So we have model school library standards that have been it's been decades, I think, that they've been in play, and they're pretty solid. And so this is something that is reminding teachers of the great resources that we already have. There's a lot of media literacy in some of our curriculum frameworks as well. And so sometimes I do want to say yes. And so, yes, this is super important to do all of this media literacy work, but it's something that it's embedded into your real life conversations with kids as they're looking into information. It's involved as they ask a question and you say, where did you get that question? Why did you ask that question? And so, I know that teachers have so much to do already and they have so much going on. And so I want to reassure educators that the message here is that we are including conversations about digital literacy as we're going about our education with our students. It naturally fits in so well. The other thing I wanted to add is that with this, now that AI has come to the forefront of all of our minds, understanding why is there all this misinformation? Like, how does this all work is also super helpful. The more that we start to learn about the way AI works and start to embed some computer science concepts into our classrooms, even better. And that's something also that does not have to be a discrete standalone opportunity. These are things that can be embedded into what is already being taught. So that's, that's really, I think, if you read the CDE AI guidance, that's really what we're talking about here is getting kids ready for the world of today, but not asking teachers to have a whole new class, put a whole new class into the schedule, figure this, oh my goodness, we are guiding them through the modern world as we are learning as well.
Yeah. And I was talking, oh, sorry, Christine, I was talking to
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well,
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
I just want to really highlight, like this is like really getting me on my soapbox, what Kat just said that I think is so necessary to highlight and underscore is that this is not one more thing to teach. It's not another layer. This is incorporated, it's embedded. This is teaching in context of, right? Like if you're going to be teaching typing, you're not going to teach typing in a 45-minute block that's standalone. You're going to incorporate typing lessons while somebody is actually learning, like writing their essay or whatever it is, right? It's incorporated. So, and even just from a cognitive development standpoint and retention and long-term and building into your schema, it's all inclusive. So that is something to truly highlight what Kat just said.
Yeah. And again, yeah, it's not one more thing. It's something that should be interwoven easily, right? I mean, because think about it. Teachers tend to give primary factual sources to students. But when students are doing their own research, they're not going to be getting that. So teachers need to be able, I think, really to give a couple resources and say, one of these is not real. Let's do some, deducing to be able to do that. One of my favorite lessons to do when I taught 8th grade science was the moon landing hoax lesson. And I would give 3 different resources to students. One that just talked about the factual information of how we prepared for the moon landing. One, a dramatization of the astronauts going to the moon, and then one, all the truth of that we didn't really go to the moon. It was all faked. And I gave them this information. I told them, figure out on your own, did we go to the moon? And everybody came back and said, we didn't. And they pointed to the false information. I said, okay, look at who wrote these. And they looked that person up, and it turned out they weren't really who they said they were. Right. And so really diving into misinformation and having the kids critically think that about those things are important. And I was talking to Katie McNamara. Catherine, you know her very well. She's a very great mind in digital media literacy. She's a fantastic teacher librarian here in California. And I was talking to her, hey, can you help me put together a list of resources to help teachers, get through AB 873? And she's like, I can. She goes, but this isn't new. I go, really? She goes, no, back in 2018, SB 830 said that schools should be teaching digital media literacy. This is just ensuring it's not done by the teacher librarians now, that it's done throughout the schools. And so, again, anybody listening going, oh, I didn't prepare, talk to your teacher librarian. They've been doing this since 2018. They will know what to do. They will help you intertwine that into the thing. So I love this conversation because everything connects. everything connects together when we're talking about this. But one thing I wanted to point to before we end the show, because we try to keep this about 20, 25 minutes, is when we do let students use these tools, right? Students are already using them at home, so acknowledging their use. What can teachers do to feel more comfortable with their use, to bring AI out of the shadows and not have the kids sneakily use them because they think they're going to get in trouble? How do we bring them out into the shadows, right? So I know a couple strategies schools are using is crafting norms within the classroom, showcasing AI abuses that we won't tolerate and proper uses that they will. Another one I've seen teachers start utilizing is AI citations. Now, I know there's big companies out there like MLA, APA, who, tried to put forward some ideas of how to cite AI. But, myself, I think there needs to be something in the lines of this. Let me show this quick little image right here. When you're citing AI, I think there's more than just the traditional citations, because you can't go back and reference these tools. I know some of these tools do have that share button where you can share the conversation you've had with the AI. I just don't know how long those share buttons are active, right? But I think when you're using AI, when you're having kids use a braggadocious approach, bragging about what they made the AI do and how they made the AI do it, I think that can truly create a great communication, community building of AI use in the classroom. So I've always thought, when AI is used, it should be in the byline, right? Written by the student, but then AI used, and maybe list how it was used. And then in the back page, what tool, what was your exact prompt? What was your purpose? And the purpose should not be, so I had 30 more minutes to play Fortnite tonight. And then conclusion, almost a quick reflection of how did they feel what did they get out of this tool? I know that's not traditional citation, but AI is not a traditional tool to cite. You don't really have to give credit to the AI. If you don't want to. But I think in the classroom, you should, and teachers should be aware. What are your thoughts on AI citations and maybe other strategies to have teachers feel more comfortable utilizing AI in their classroom?
Yeah, so I agreed that, you can't really officially, formally cite generative AI. And yet we need to have these conversations with kids, and we want them to tell us what they're doing so that we can guide them through this conversation. So I like what you were proposing there, Joe. I also think in regards to knowing kids are going to be doing this and how do we have these conversations with kids, modeling, like a teacher can model. I asked, a generative AI to do this, and this was the answer. What do you all think? Do you think that that's something I should use? Is that, kind of constructing those policies together is helpful. And also, yeah, that's a great point. Randy says, does the president have to cite his speechwriters? Because similarly, AI can be like a writing center in college, which you do not cite. So that is certainly an argument that I've heard that makes a lot of sense. What I will say is, if educators are, first of all, the plagiarism checkers are pretty much worthless. They're not accurate enough. But here's the deal. As an educator who is teaching kids, I taught 6th grade, and I taught kids, ELA was part of what I taught. I knew how my students wrote because they had to write some things like in person every day, a quick write. I know their writing style. I know what they're capable of. If they bring me something that doesn't look like that, that's a red flag. Here's another idea. What if a kid brings in a paper and I'm just not quite sure if they actually wrote it or if their friend wrote it, which is the same as AI writing it, right? All right, well, then I'm going to ask AI, take this paper and generate some questions for me, a multiple choice test, and I'll see if the kid passes it. Because if you wrote it, you should be able to pass the test, right? So there are some creative ways that we can approach this. But I'd love to hear what Christina has to say, because I know she taught English, I believe, as well. So
I did at the high school level. So I have to commend you at the middle school level. I think in taking a step back, I think we have to give educators far more credit than what the general public thinks, right? Like, teachers are really smart people and highly educated, over credentialed, over certificated. I mean, we have a lot of common sense. It's making sure that the teachers uh, have a resource to lean on should they need additional support, just like any profession, right? But to think that teachers can't tell the difference on what their students are writing and what they're capable of, that's hard to believe. So I'm more on the side of teachers are pretty with it. Teachers are really sharp, especially in the wake of the pandemic when technology just became attached to our hips, essentially. So, in terms of citations, in terms of just the plagiarism piece, in terms of checking for understanding or what have you, just from the learning aspect, again, this is not a new concept. This is another way of bringing in teaching how to cite, how to check on plagiarism, how to fact check, how to be a critical thinker, right? I mean, we've been teaching these concepts for I don't know how long, but this isn't new. It's just now there's just a new thing that's coming in that we have to incorporate into what we've already been doing.
Yeah, and this is just the forefront, right? Chat GPT is only 13 months old, right? And look how far we've come. And look how far we're going to go. We don't even know. And so we don't know what the future holds. All we can do is think about where we could go and how our students can empower themselves with these tools, how teachers can empower themselves with these tools. Think about the positives and keep looking at those. And audience, we try to keep this show short, so it's under 30 minutes. Look down at the bottom. It says, ask us questions at qlearns.org/AIEEAAO. Please ask us questions. We will post your questions. We will give you credit for your questions. We will have AI answer your questions. No, we'll answer your questions right here. But please, all month long, our shows are always the second Tuesday of every month at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please, you have until next month in February. Ask us questions. We will get on it and we will answer those for you. But until then, Catherine, thank you so much for being here, my friend. Christina, thank you so much for being here. From the CDE, from Q, we're here for you, and we're always here for education, educators, and students. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.